Welcome to the Consultant's Way podcast, your go-to resource for all things professional services consulting. Brought to you by McMahon and Ransford, a strategy consulting firm with over 30 years of experience helping B2B organizations achieve sustainable growth. And the Consultant's Way, the leading comprehensive consultant development program. Hosted by Dean McMahon and Anthony Paluska, we share expert insights, firsthand experiences, and conversations with industry leaders on the topics that interest you most.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of their employer, company, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome back to the Consultant's Way podcast. Anthony Paluska, Dean McMahon. Dean, how are you?
I'm doing great, Anthony. How are you guys? How are you today? How's your whole family? You moved into a new house recently.
I'm good.
Things are better, I think, than the always better than pre-move.
Everything is better than pre-move, so everything's great. It's kind of home now. We've been here long enough that it feels kind of
Did you get out and run in the good weather today?
No. But I get to look at it, so that's different than the apartment when I was in like the dungeon room and I couldn't see anything. So hey, at least I get to see the good weather instead of just hear about it.
I did like the story when you owned like 3 houses at one time. But hey, today we have a very exciting story, and I got to say, first of all, I don't think I've experienced an organization that is actually running full speed into making the future reality. And what I like best about that, and we're going to go into a lot of detail on it, but what I like best about it is how once again PS is becoming central to the success of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, and I share this a little bit in there, but as I think about it in the context of, right, is we've worked together for a long time, solving these kinds of problems for organizations, right? I mean, that at its core, it's how do we differentiate, how do we grow, how do we do something different, and the ones that tend to be the most successful always were how do we use professional services, advisory services, our consulting team, whatever you want to call it, as a strategic lever and asset. He talks about it as the tip of the spear, and that went through waves of lots of industries at different points of time. And it was right. We always talked about, which industry is in the wave right now of solving that problem. Legacy enterprise software company, they're chasing it, and they see the market dynamics in place that suggest that it's their time to do this, but they're early compared to a lot of their SaaS competitors and peers out there. So it's interesting and encouraging to see that they're taking the same step, because we, from our vantage point, can see a lot of the same symptoms that other industries went through that led them down that same path. So, any other thoughts on kind of that?
Yeah, I think that, and we've been on this a little bit lately, particularly today, the compression of valuation is a real mixed bag right now. You still see deals where we were talking about just a minute ago, a $200 million firm acquired at a $2 billion valuation software SaaS company. But we also hear that private equity is suffering a major valuation, which causes problem because they have so much debt they loan instead of equity. Sometimes it should be called private debt, not private equity. But this situation is fascinating, because as those valuations normalize, it becomes value per client, revenue per client, margin and clients, because the race for clients might be over. So I think that's fascinating, and he's got a great story about it. So it's good.
Yeah. No, I excited to share it. But to your point, it's, the one thing AI seems to be disrupting is the belief in the long-term cash flow associated with some of these organizations that were just assumed to be resilient software companies that would be there forever. And AI competitors start popping up, and they start cannibalizing or eating away at some of the business. And now that calls into question, well, if AI native firms can accelerate that quickly, what truly is your differentiator? That's what really matters. That's what should get you some valuation over the long haul, because just having a recurring revenue tail and some NRR and some things like that, right? There's some things like that aren't enough anymore. And Stuart and the Epicor team seem to be really chasing that down, and excited to share the conversation that we just had. So we'll go over to that now. Hey, Stuart, how's it going?
Hey, great. And good to spend a bit of time together, Anthony. And nice to meet you, Dean. So, all good.
Yeah, no, excited to have you. Excited to finally get this on the calendar. We've had some version of this conversation, I think, a handful of times off camera and without hitting the record button, and thought that it would be a useful one to bring to the audience and to have a broader conversation about it. But before we dive into the complex but great things you're working on right now, and what that means about professional services in general and all that kind of stuff, let's take a quick beat, and if you don't mind, give a brief introduction of yourself, and what you're working on right now at Epicor.
And Stuart, highlight those key child moments, would you?
From my early youth, absolutely.
Yeah, in public school when you wore the socks
wearing
and
a
the
suit
gathered
when you're
pants.
4 years old, if you come from the UK. So, but I still get to wear a suit today, but much less living in Austin than in London. So, so I work for a business called Epicor. We're a SaaS ERP provider. We'll do about $1.6 billion worth of revenue this year. And my responsibility is for our global manufacturing practice. So we're pretty clear on the businesses that we work with, companies that make stuff, move stuff, and sell stuff. And so my manufacturing practice is a truly global practice, and we deliver to manufacturers all over the world.
And one of the big reasons I wanted to have you on and have this conversation is you guys are going through a bit of a transformation right now that's affecting all aspects of your business. Can you speak a little bit to what you and the team are working on right now, and maybe some of the drivers as to what created that shift for you, and what caused you to move in that direction?
No, absolutely. So if you look at our biggest market disruptor at the moment, which is artificial intelligence, right? Every conversation, every article is peppered with AI, but it is truly changing technology businesses, and it's changing technology businesses quickly. So if I look at it from my perspective in Epicor, so some of those first big challenges is how you view businesses, how businesses are valued, and where is that perceived value, and why. And so as we've worked through the last few years and we've evolved as a business, and I've been with Epicor now for about 7.5 years. So 5 years ago, our big transition was how do we get from an on-prem, largely a legacy on-prem business to a SaaS business. COVID really helped accelerate that, as well as people needed to work from home, but it transformed our overall business model in terms of how we sell software and how we implement software. And time to value was always at the center of that challenge. So as soon as you sell a SaaS solution, it's on the clock. Customers want to understand the value, what they're paying for it, how they get to that value quickly. And AI has really accelerated that bit of the market. So just the market overall. So if you have a look at how companies are valued, because I think that's a good way to look at intrinsic value, then whether it's a PE or a VC, or it's on the stock exchange, then in terms of the acquisition of AI and being able to demonstrate the value of AI is an important point. But it's back to us being a verticalized business, focused on companies that make stuff, move stuff, and sell stuff. That gives us intrinsic value alongside AI. And because if you're more generic, if you can do 100 different industries with a single software platform, then inherently, actually, that makes you a bit more generic and a bit more open to new market entrants. And what we're seeing as cash goes into VC competition, and there's been hundreds of millions of dollars investment in recent months, or indeed PE acquisitions, verticalization is an important component of being able to add additive, additional AI value. So, but the core of that means that the companies that can provide a strong level of verticalized service or solution means that there's inherent advantage in that as the world acquires AI. So rather than AI just being a premise of an important investment premise that everybody needs to respond to, it's different for verticalized businesses because we can command a value ahead of being able to apply AI and stay ahead of our competition. So what we're doing in delivery, therefore, our professional services is at the tip of the spear in a way that perhaps it never has been before. Because the time to value, if you look at those new market entrants that hasn't perhaps got all of those investments and all of those acquisitions that we've been busy making over the last 10 years to make sure that we can deliver to a wider industry set of solutions to solve, it means that we can take our vertical specialization, we can enrich that with AI as we work through how we drive time to value in a way that we never have before, which gives us natural advantage in the market, but also a necessity that if we don't solve that challenge, then perhaps solutions that aren't verticalized will solve it before us. So the market is moving much faster than it was before, but it's important to build on your advantage, not just where the market is. And I think that's very much where we are in Epicor. And as a professional services team, it's all about driving time to value at a rate that we've never been able to do before.
You said a bunch in there that I think we'll unpack over the course of this conversation, but and I don't want to oversimplify your premise, but one of the big takeaways I heard from it was, hey, look, if we had a cross industry piece of technology that existed out there today, we could differentiate in the past based on some things about the features and the capabilities and its deployability across all of these different industries. But then AI came along, and that extra layer of AI, which is also inherently generic, sitting on top of this cross industry thing, you lose some of your moat and your differential associated with your product plus AI because people can replicate that rather quickly. And so in order to truly win in a couple of spaces, it requires picking the markets that you should own and dominate and building solutions for them and using your professional services team and your entire org to make sure that you know that market, you know their problems perhaps even before they know the problems that they have, because you see so many of them, you can spot patterns. And because of that, you can really cement yourself in that space to thwart off any competitors that could come along with any technical differentiation here or there, because you've demonstrated an ability to own and drive value to a specific market. Is that right there at the core of it?
So that's right. So if you take that time to value challenge, this isn't just about delivering technology, it's about delivering business outcomes. So if your verticalized focus can focus on achieving the most important customer outcomes in a way where we're deploying quickly and we're deploying to value, you need to do both those things, then you're going to stay ahead of new market entrants. There's another world, whereas if you can't do that, is what your customers are not going to say is, wouldn't it be nice if you could do more AI? Because then you'll be much easier to do business with. What they're going to do is they're going to say, look, well, your competition, they can answer our questions faster. They can do things at a pace that you can't. They can turn this software on and get us live, even if it might be with a fraction of the footprint, but start to add value quickly. And all of a sudden, they're having a different conversation because you haven't been through that transformation. And so if you look at the core there of the effort that we're making around that, it's not just about methodology or skills. Both of those are critical, and I'm sure we'll kind of break down into those. But it is about making sure that your product strategy is also centered on solving their problems. So spending real dollars, making sure that your software is not just fully functional, but deployable quickly is really important.
Yeah, it's much easier to solve problems when you are enmeshed in a deep understanding of it. You work with it every day, and that moat is difficult to cross for other people that just want to use um, AI as their only entrance into a market.
That's right. That's right. So that moat gives you strength in the short term, but if you look at all the investment going into new businesses and new markets, is in previously it might take a new market entrant 5 or 10 years to be to be level set in terms of what you can provide. AI gives a natural advantage in that you can develop systems, processes, and everything else faster than you could before. So that natural moat that says we own manufacturing, we understand how manufacturers work. It's really difficult for new market entrants to be credible in those markets until they're not, because they've been through rounds of rapid innovation in a way that the market has never seen. They're using agents, development agents, to develop their software, and they're solving the challenges in a different way rather than just competing on features, functions, and the depth of functionality to be able to be successful.
Yeah. And that immersion in the market allows you to be solving your market's tomorrow's problem rather than yesterday's problem, because you're focused on it and you're thinking about it in a lot of ways. So that gives you some permission to play, but it also gives you some ability to explore and do more with a lot of these organizations if you can be seen as a leader that aligns your solution set to their needs and challenges and that sort of thing. As you've specialized and focused on this, has have you all had to say no to certain markets that you were getting some business from before? Did this come with some trade-offs of having to focus means that you're not focusing and participating in other things, and how has that gone if it has at all?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think Epicor as a business has always been focused on the markets that we're most successful with. So it's less about disinvesting in markets or anything like that, and it's been more focused on really how we get our customers in our core markets successful quickly. And perhaps if I use kind of a key example of where we've been investing from a development and professional services point of view. So if you look at the implementation of any ERP solution or any actually enterprise application, there is always legacy and effort around data. Now, data is a massive topic, and actually one of the reasons that AI is seeing less kind of a payback initially is because if you haven't got your data right, then you know what, it doesn't matter how clever the AI is, it's really difficult to make that successful. But what we've done is we've identified the need that says in most projects, it's our customers that deal with the data. They've got to extract it from legacy solutions. They've got to understand how the solution fits, and then be able to load that and take that to their next generation ERP, which is Epicor. So quite often, that's not really a big expense for Epicor. It's a big expense for our customers. And it can take a while. And typically it takes 5 or 6 months through any kind of enterprise implementation to be able to, from start to where data really needs to be accurate, it needs to be clean, and it needs to be transformed, and load that to your go forward solution takes 5 months. So what we've done is we've taken that out with AI solutions. So what that means is we have a data platform that's AI enabled. So we've taken it off our customers' hands and said, we'll extract it, we'll work with you through that mapping process, and we use a whole suite of AI tools that our product development team have built. And then we can load that quickly. So rather than taking 5 months, it takes less than a month. And it means that when we start our project, rather than the customer wondering how they're going to use the solution, we can say, here's the solution with your data, not just representative data, with your data, and why can you not use industry best practice? So that becomes quite a powerful change that we wouldn't have been able to do 2 years ago. But layer in there our industry specificity over that, then we're not only saying, here's your data in your new solution, we're saying, here's your data in an industry best practice, and this is how you get to your business outcomes. Without the technology, we wouldn't have been able to do that 2 years ago. And with the technology, we naturally create a competitive advantage, which isn't necessarily about what we already know what industry we're focusing on, but it is about being able to solve those customer challenges early and drive time to value in a way that simply wasn't achievable without the technology.
It's a great example, and so thank you for sharing that. As we've talked about this before, this change requires a lot of change. This change in approach and strategy, all the reasons that you talked about, as upside for your business. If you can further differentiate, if you can drive quicker time to value, if you can do these kinds of things, you can both defend your existing install base, but also expand and grow your business. And I think you're even seeing that in growth and expansion of your team. But the skills required, and you alluded to this a little bit earlier, of your team members naturally evolve as well as some of the AI tools and the productivity tools that we have and the agents that you've all have built can do some of the traditional activities that we're seen as high value amongst the team, particularly for professional services. So would you mind spending a minute talking about how you're viewing the skill transformation and evolution that needs to take place to align with this business strategy evolution that Epicor is going through right now?
A great question, and very current and a real journey for us as well. So as a business, as a software business, we're 50 years old, which is pretty old for a software business. And through that period, so if you look and just kept it black and white, that says, as a consultant, let's say 10 years ago, to give it time, kind of pre-SaaS, you're sitting on-prem, where did you really bring the value? And it was on having a personal toolkit where you could work with your customer, that you could take all of the tools and techniques that you'd built before and apply those to be able to deliver a customer experience which saw them adopt the technology, but adopt it within a set of configuration and customization in terms of where the consultant had been and where they've been working for the last 5 or 10 years. So for our consultants at that point to be most successful, it was those white knights, the people that come in, the customers prepared to pay whatever for them. It doesn't matter if they're there for months, is they see the value because they're building what the customer's asking for. They're and quite often transforming the software rather than the process. So to be able to say that that's how you want to work, Mr. Customer, look what we've done. We've built dashboards, we've built process, we've done all of these things to answer the question, which is kind of what do you want, Mr. Customer, right? So as we cycle through now to SaaS and now time to value being at the center of that, our consultants need to ask a different question, which can often mean a different set of skills. So if you look at those engineers of 5 or 10 years ago, it was their ability to be able to demonstrate the whistles, the bells in terms of how we make this software unique for you. Now it's not. It's about being able to say there are good and great and best business outcomes for you in terms of how your business process should work. We know because we've done this 2,000 times before. And actually, it's my job as a consultant to be able to take you on a journey where you can change rather than to take the software on a journey where we change the software. So what that means is a different set of core soft skills, how you negotiate, how you communicate, how you kind of be able to bring that consulting expertise in a way where this is industry best practice. This is the best thing for your business. By the way, this is the business outcomes that your CEO has bought. and this is how we're going to achieve it. And so that means different soft skills, but it means more than that as well. Because back to kind of the theme of AI, is we've built an implementation AI, a senior principal consultant that sits on everybody's shoulder. It's about being able to answer those questions really quickly. Why is it industry best practice? Who else is doing this? What are my other options? And being able to make sure that we inject all of that experience to the customer in a timely way through a consultant that's well equipped to achieve that can do all of that work in the background. And so rather than being able to say, I'll change it for you, of course it's configurable, or let me go away and think about it, and I'm going to come back tomorrow and tell you what we're going to do, is we can keep that much more current, much more focused. Business outcomes, this is what you've bought, this is how it works, this is how you need to adopt industry best practice. And you simply cannot do that without a key set of core consulting skills where you can impact and influence your customer. So it's never going to be just about the AI and the technology, but it is about transforming how we consult, which means ultimately there are good services dollars, and there are bad services dollars, and we need to be much more focused on making sure that we deliver that customer value through the good dollars rather than just delivering a consulting dollar because the customer is prepared to pay for it.
Stuart, I think that's the biggest revolution that people don't even know is going on, and it will swamp the PS organizations across the SaaS continuum and embedded in non-SaaS. That the old days don't exist. I love that you took us before SaaS, because there was a good world there, and then SaaS is a much different world and a curtailing and a valuation model, and we've talked about all that. But now, if you can't stay ahead of the client, take the client, be there for the client, and make the client successful as an agent, in this case a human agent supported by AI, then you're going to find yourself, and we were just talking about this earlier, and Anthony, you're going to find yourself at risk as a leader, but behind as an organization, and that's a revolutionary change that I don't think most people see yet.
No, I think that's right. I think that's right. And most organizations say two things at the same time, which are quite contradictory. Right?
Wait. Exactly. All day, every day. Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's all focused on time to value. We get our customers there not cheaply, but for a good value and a good investment. And then at the same time, we drive our businesses by revenue and margin ultimately. So being able to intersect that, and that's more than a 1-year journey, because it's changed for lots of software businesses. And there are software businesses that I know that gave up professional services revenue as to drive SaaS. But that's in terms of, I think the kind of the Goldilocks bit here is about being able to do both, right? So it's about being able to equip your professional services teams with the right skills, be able to make the right offering, to be able to drive both time to value and cost to complete, to be able to grow your market share, while at the same time maintaining responsibility to your business's profitability and EBIT overall. And I think you can always give services away, but that doesn't represent value to your business. Being able to solve this challenge, so to be able to deliver high value, good margin, but a good customer outcome in a way that perhaps businesses haven't done before, is as important as being able to give it away. Because you can always give it away, but then and our CEO is pretty good at this, is kind of keeping the business tight and being able to offer strong EBIT and strong growth. And if you look at the most successful companies today, the most successful software companies, they are businesses that can drive, the faster that they grow, the more profitable they are. And you don't achieve that necessarily by just giving stuff away.
Would you say also the most successful ones right now really know how to leverage PS?
Yes.
And they've kind of taken they talk about two different messages. The message is we really want success of our client, and we, for God's sakes, we don't want them to buy PS.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you're going to see the people break out that actually get to know their PS organization and engage with them.
I firmly agree, because it's moving professional services from a necessary evil that's just, it's something we've got to do as a business for our clients to be successful, to making sure that your professional services team is an advantage when you're selling and as your business is growing. And so what we're seeing is product development clearly focus on building tools for professional services rather than features and functions. Back to kind of the example that I used around data migration, we needed product development, proper product development dollars to be able to tackle that challenge. And the business needed to acknowledge that it was the right challenge to solve, because there's 100 ways that money could be spent. So absolutely, the value of professional services is critical as we go through this change, as the industry goes through the change.
Yeah, how have you seen the alignment and the adoption of that message and concept of PS being the thing that's being sold, the tip of the spear? I think you used the term earlier, by the sales and the selling organizations, because there's selling professional services, and selling a solution or selling an outcome is different than selling the features and the functionality. And I think we've talked a little bit about your team there, but how is that gone? How is what's been your role in helping to get them aligned to that process, and where are you on that journey?
Yeah, again, a journey. So in terms of the one of the areas that we've been spending a lot of time talking about is making sure that because the way teams are compensated is critically important to making sure that they're aligned. So, but I think in terms of there's a couple of important principles here, many of which many organizations have solved over the years. So first of all is consulting services, professional services needs a clear role in the sales cycle. Quite often that means making sure that you've got a consulting sales team that enables you to bridge that gap through being able to commit the right resource at the right time as you take prospects through to become customers. That's critically important. But at the same time, all of the development we've been doing around our new methodology around time to value, we've had sales involved in that in a way that perhaps we haven't before. And I think that's because there's an acknowledgement from both the sales organization as well as the product organization that the world is changing. And so unless we solve this, we're going to start to lose more deals. And it's not really around the cost to complete. It is about being able to provide those business outcomes in a clear and predictable way. And so they probably need us more than they did a few years ago, because it moves away from being a competitive necessity. Of course, we have a capable services team that can deliver what you need to becoming a competitive advantage, which is actually we're more predictable, we can commit to timeframes, we can commit to outcomes, and we're driving that in a different way than we were before. So I think what we're seeing from the sales organization is perhaps always two conversations again, which is, can you always be cheaper, because then we'll always win more, and wouldn't it be great if you guys can do this? Those conversations don't change. But in terms of the acknowledgement that if we're not solving the implementation challenge, then they're going to be losing to competitors that are using a different language than we are. And it comes back to that entire customer experience through that AI enablement that new market entrants can bring in a way that's seen them gain market share. And so I think there, Anthony, there is not just an understanding from kind of how we go to market from a product development, product marketing point of view, putting the dollars behind that, but a much firmer alignment with our sales colleagues that solving this challenge is the biggest challenge in the organization and for the market, rather than being able to offer new functions and features or something like that. So they're coming on the journey with us, which I think is exciting.
Yeah, and you used the word alignment several times in that explanation, and that not to use it again, that aligns perfectly perfectly with our experience having worked with lots of organizations that have gone through a similar transformation to you all, right? No matter what you, right, because at different stages for different industries, you might call it a different initiative internally. You're on the time, you guys are on the time to value transformation, but anybody that is becoming more focused on their customer, leveraging professional services to play a more strategic and advisory and differentiator type role, they all go through this process, and it's always spearheaded by one group or one P&L owner or somebody like that. And the ones that are successful versus the ones that fail are the ones that bring the entire organization along very early in the process, because it's not just the PS group that has to behave differently. It's the PS group has to enable sales in a different way, and sales has to see the successes of some of the early wins, and product has to do things different, and marketing strategy needs to align with how we talk about these as solutions. Rather, I mean, you could go on and on. I mean, our role often begins with, well, help us get our PS organization ready to do X, Y, and Z. And then so often over the past 10, 15 years ended up with, hey, the most important thing we've done in the process is be the glue that holds the functions together until they learn how to play nice with each other, right? And so the fact that you all, and I think you've been through several of these iterations before, the fact that you're like, hey, sales has to be involved early in this process, and we have to come up with the way that we support them with PS rather than rely on them, right? There's an integration aspect to it that I hear from you that it doesn't surprise me that you guys have been successful and moved. You say it's been a journey. You've actually, from a timeline perspective, moved pretty quickly down this path of shifting your model, and I hope you feel the same way. We've seen it a
Yeah,
lot,
yeah,
and
yeah. But I think we're moving faster than we've ever moved as an organisation. And you're absolutely right. Those critical points of being able to integrate the business and go on a journey together. And we've done that under the stewardship of the president of our business, who has really helped integrate our lines of business to solve this challenge in a way that we're not always great at. And we've run a series of workshops now as we've developed the new framework, which has seen all of those core areas of the business, whether that's kind of marketing, sales, pre-sales, another critical component, alongside ourselves and our support organizations and customer success, to say, how do we solve this problem together? And it just happens that if consulting services does need to be at the tip of the spear to be able to meet that market demand.
as expected, right? We, like I said, we had several of these conversations leading up to this. This has been great. We appreciate the insights and the perspective that you shared on all of this. If you could put yourself in the position of others like you, other services leaders out there, other businesses that are whether contemplating this shift or just dipping their toe into the water on this, what's something you'd leave everybody with as some words of wisdom and guidance on this topic?
And this might not be the right place to start, but I think it's important to know, right? So in 5 years' time, our industry is going to be different than it is today. And many of the software companies, technology companies that may even be common names today, the market's going to be different in 5 years. Right? So in terms of, so I think what's at the core of the challenge is it's always got to be the customer. So as soon as you lose focus on the customer and what the customer's expectation is, whether they're a prospect that's looking at buying or a customer that's already bought. So you always need to keep that at the center. But in terms of, I think that risk that the market changing, and if you don't adapt, you die, right? And technology companies are at the center of that. So if you need to adapt, which we all do, then what we need to be able to do that is is at a pace than perhaps we haven't seen before. So this isn't a over the next 3 years. What are we going to achieve over the next 3 months, 6 months? So we're setting very ambitious targets for how quick the change runs, which means we need to set priorities that puts this the first and the last thing that we worry about in terms of achieving. So that prioritization means that we need to prioritize less on some other things. So to be able to make sure that we achieve that. And then we need to be able to do it with the whole business, not just part of the business. So that, I think, in terms of coming back to it being a professional services initiative or an organization initiative, you've got to make it an organization initiative. And it needs to be owned by the ELT, not just as one of the things that need to be achieved, but one of the most important things that the organization needs to tackle. And as leaders within the space, and me for a leader within Epicor, it's really important that I take that position, which is it's about bringing the whole organization with me, but it's about the speed that we operate at as well to be able to affect the change. Because if we don't, then somebody else is. And that's happening in the market at a pace that we haven't seen before.
Well said. And Stuart, we appreciate the feedback, the conversation. We want to track the progress as you go through this journey and see 6 months, 9 months from now how you've progressed through that. So I suspect we'll find other ways to catch up and share that with the audience. So thanks again for making the time.
That's cool.
Thanks so much, Stuart.
Thanks both.
Well, if you enjoyed that conversation with Stuart and want to hear more like it, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like, subscribe, follow, make sure you're getting the latest episodes on from each of those sources. If you want to reach out to Dean or myself, you can find us at podcast@consultantsway.com, or you can find us on our respective LinkedIn pages. Look forward to hearing from everybody, and we'll see you next time.
we've had sales involved in that in a way that perhaps we haven't before. And I think that's because there's an acknowledgement from both the sales organization as well as the product organization that the world is changing. And so unless we solve this, we're going to start to lose more deals. And it's not really around the cost to complete. It is about being able to provide those business outcomes in a clear and predictable way. And so they probably need us more than they did a few years ago, because it moves away from being a competitive necessity. Of course, we have capable services team that can deliver what you need to becoming a competitive advantage, which is actually we're more predictable, we can commit to timeframes, we can commit to outcomes, and we're driving that in a different way than we were before.